Hello, this is John News Prime with me, Ernest Manu. Coming up, censure motion against Finance Minister fails in a one-sided vote that saw the majority stage a walkout.
Honourable members, I'll be
Tonight we'll bring you excerpts of that debate preceding the vote and hear from the minority that has declared a path of non-cooperation with the Finance Minister. Also, civil society turned down government's invitation to deliberate on the debt exchange program that has been widely rejected by investors and labour unions. We'll bring you details, and as we build up to the NDC elections this weekend, we focus on the internal rift over the NDC's National Youth Organizer contest. The incumbent George Oparado faces stiff opposition. We'll bring you details, and later in showbiz, we'll hear from the 84-year-old statesman nicknamed the Gentle Jack.
And they say,
oh yeah, some people say Jack.
Oh, Jack is delicious. But I don't know. That's how they perceive me. Well, I've got a bit of height and, of course, a bit of bulk too. So perhaps given this size and height, people might expect me to be a bit of a bully or something.
We have details here on John News Prime. Thank you. Hello again, my name is Ernest Manu. Many thanks for choosing us. This is John News, independent, fearless and credible. It was bound to fail after the majority side indicated they will not support the minority in this motion, even though 97 of them had openly called for the removal of Ken Ofori-Atta from office. The minority, however, banked their hopes in a secret ballot process to secure a win. But as reported earlier by John News, the majority staged a walkout, rendering the vote an automatic failure because the 136 NDC MPs do not meet the threshold. We'll get into that shortly, but ahead of that vote, there was a hot debate. My colleague Kweku Asante sat through it and now reports.
to pass a vote of censure on the minister responsible for finance. Those in favor after the secret vote is 136. Those against, 0. Abstentions, 0.
It was a day the NDC minority in Parliament hoped they were going to make history. They could not, or at least they made a statement. 136 of them, all of them in the minority, were on the floor today to vote to remove Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta. They could not get the support of their majority colleagues who walked out while the process was still unfolding. And because of the constitutional threshold of 137 MPs, this censure motion has failed. Unless we've heard from the Speaker of Parliament, the motion is lost. But before the vote happened, we had a spirited debate from the minority side and also some spirited debate from the majority side.
Categorically, that this report, as well as the work of the committee, found as a matter of fact as follows. For instance, on ground 1, funding of the National Cathedral, it was very, very clear that the minister exceeded what was appropriated. In other words, he engaged in expenditure in excess of appropriation. Mr. Speaker, in respect of misreporting of data to Parliament, we found, as a matter of fact, that the minister did misreport matters to Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by making it very clear that the report of this committee has found unassailable evidence of misconduct on the part of the minister. It has found even if it has exonerated the minister on some grounds, it has found that the minister misconducted himself with respect to a lot of grounds.
Mr. Speaker, clearly, all your allegations had no leg to stand. All your allegations stood on stilts, and you yourself, you were candid. They are acting in bad faith. But I want to tell them that our side will not support that part. We will not support them. We will never support you. But we want to take this opportunity to tell you that what you're doing is wrong.
When the debates on both sides concluded, we heard also from the Attorney General and Minister for Justice, Godfrey Dame-Yeboah, who said that the process that Parliament had adopted to deal with this process were tinged with some bit of unconstitutionality.
The Speaker, my observation quickly is that none of the grounds, apart from ground 4, constituted a proper subject matter for the passage of a vote of censure. The Speaker, indeed, if that's the case, then this Honourable House was also not close to jurisdiction at all to consider any of the grounds for or in support of the motion for censure, apart from what I think may pass, which is ground 4. Mr. Speaker, the conclusion I draw from all of this is that the basis for motion for censure must be an act which strikes as misconduct, illegality, or violation of the oath of office of a minister. To the extent that none of these matters has been established in the proceedings before the other committee, I will certainly submit that the proceedings of the other committee, with all respect, especially on account of the illegalities that I have demonstrated, were forced upon the committee by my good friend Domekaini, were improper, and therefore the motion
Honourable Minister,
Like Pontius Pilate,
We wash our hands.
we will wash our hands. We will wash our hands. We will wash our hands of this. J must come. J must come. J must come. J must come. J must come.
We are washing our hands. We are washing our hands.
J. 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 J.
Reporting for Joy News, Kwasante, Parliament House, Accra.
Following the terms of Article 82(1), the vote is accordingly lost.
My colleague Kweku Asante joins me live from Parliament with some more update on this. Kweku, a lot of drama in Parliament today, and in fact, the Finance Minister himself was there. He said he's done nothing amiss. We'll hear from him shortly because he thought he was being crucified, and that was not justified. But tell me, what has been the reaction of the minority after they lost the vote?
So the reaction is that of despondency, is that of sadness. They said they had hoped that their colleagues in the NPP majority side would have joined them to make history. They have failed in their effort to remove Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta, and at least Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta will have this censure motion now off his neck in a kind of argument that we've had on the floor today. They say, like you said early on, that they are going to adopt a position that will make it difficult for Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta to transact business on the floor of the House. Of course, they do not have the numbers. They are only 136 or at best 137. They may try to frustrate the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta, but if the NPP MPs are able to marshal all their numbers to be on the floor, then that will lose. And so they are starting that defiance from this budget. The 2.5% VAT increase is going to suffer according to the minority. 80 million Ghana cedis allocation to the National Cathedral is going to suffer. The 1% e-levy review is going to suffer. The idea of removing the threshold of the e-levy from the daily 100 cedis is also going to suffer. So according to the minority, and we heard that from the minority leader on the floor, when the majority side walked out and when his side's censure motion was declared as lost, saying that he was disappointed that although his colleagues on the majority side, 98 of them have given word that they were not happy with the work of the finance minister,
that they had failed to do this. So while they walked out of the chamber, you could see sadness, you could see that they were not happy about how the process has unfolded, but they say that at least Ghanaians will see that they were on their side.
And talking about those 98 MPs on the majority side that openly called for the removal of Ken Ofori-Atta, were they in the chamber? Did they participate in the debate? And post the walkout, what have we heard from them so far?
So I was looking up from the press gallery where I sat, and out of the 98 NPP MPs who had asked Ken to be sacked, a number of them were still in the chamber, about 12 of them, not all of them. Right. A vast majority of them were not there, but I could see their leader, Andy Apiakubi, the MP for Subin as well, Eugene Boachienki was there, and a number of them who held that press conference demanding that Ken Ofori-Atta be sacked. The sticking point is that none of them engaged in the debate. The debate on the majority side was led by the majority leader himself. We heard from the deputy, Alexander Kojo Manu. Then we also heard from the minister himself, then the Attorney General and Minister for Justice, Godfred Yeboah-Dame, who led the side to, as it were, defend the finance minister. But these 98 NPP MPs, some of whom were on the floor, did not, in fact, argue for the finance minister. When we stepped out, I spoke to one of them off the record, and he was telling me that they would have wished that they could have taken part in this process, but the party's structures had instructed all of them not to take part. So indeed, right from this morning, we're expecting that the majority were not going to take part in this vote. We thought they were going to stay in the House and abstain from the vote, but they decided that instead of sitting there and quote-unquote giving the process legitimacy, what they thought was to walk out, and they walk out.
And as you rightly pointed out earlier in the day, that we have picked signals this was going to happen, and you mentioned that the party structures was going to make sure that they actually whip all the MPs in line. Did we see, of course, we saw some of the ministers of state on the floor of the chamber, including the Attorney General who participated in the debate, but did we see party officials, executives of the NPP in the chamber to ensure that what they had planned was indeed rolled out?
So today, no known NPP executive, as in the national executives, were on the floor. The last time the censure motion was debated in Parliament, the General Secretary himself, Justin Kodia Frimpong, was in the House to ensure that his side toed the line of the party. Today, he wasn't, but it was clear that the party had instructed the mechanisms within the party to work. When the proceedings started today, the majority chief whip, Frank Anodabro, was not around. But just when the debate concluded, he came in, sat right behind the majority leader, and you could see him gesturing to MPs, trying to get them on board to know that this is the plan. So as soon as the majority leader, in the video we showed you there, when he washed his hands to proverbially say that they were not going to be part of the process, all the corners of the majority caucus aisle in Parliament, all the MPs started getting up, and the various exit points in the House or in that particular chamber, part of the chamber, were being flooded, and the MPs were walking out. Right. And so it would seem as though the MPs came on the floor knowing what exactly their strategy was, and they were ready to comply with that.
And finally, Kweku, even though the vote was lost, the report of the committee, the ad hoc committee that considered this motion and perused the issues leveled against Ken Ofori-Atta, had a report before Parliament. Was it adopted by the House?
That report was adopted unanimously by a voice vote. And because the NPP MPs were not there, there were no against that particular motion. And so the specific findings that the committee made, and we've heard there from Dr. Dominicani, co-chair, alluding that they made some adverse findings against the finance minister. All of them now form part of parliamentary record in terms of the procedure that they adopted at the ad hoc committee. But ultimately, the vote that mattered, the vote that could have forced the hands of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo to dismiss Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta did not happen. It did not materialize because only 136 out of the at least required number of 183 showed up to be counted, and Ken Ofori-Atta, at least for now, will continue in that role, knowing very well that at least the censure motion albatross hanging around his neck is off now, Ernest.
Kweku, thank you very much for the details from Parliament today. Let's go to Zoom again. We are joined by CDD Fellow, Dr. John Osai Kwapong. Thank you very much, Doc, for your time here on Joy News Prime. A lot of drama has ensued today in Parliament, and we've seen a lot happen ahead of this critical vote today. But of course, I'm sure you're not surprised that the vote failed because of the indication given. But is there anything of value in this entire process as far as governance and our parliamentary democracy is concerned?
And thank you for having me. Yes, as you rightly said, I don't think many people are surprised that the vote failed. But I think as a matter of democratic practice, for me, it does show that there's still a role for Parliament to play in the post-appointment process, right? The president nominates, Parliament approves, and it seems to suggest that once Parliament is done approving a given minister, then whatever happens post-approval is up to the appointing authority. But I think the process of censure still allows the legislative body to still have some say in the post-approval process if they find the conduct or otherwise of a minister of state untoward, and there's a strong basis for carrying out a censure motion against him or her. So as a matter of democratic practice, for me, I think it's always refreshing to see that Parliament every so often decides to exercise the powers vested in them by virtue of the Constitution. Because we always like to say that the executive is strong, Parliament is weak. My counter-argument has always been that Parliament is only as weak as they themselves make them, right? That if you do not exert the powers that are vested in you vis-a-vis the powers that are vested in other arms of government, then of course, the perception would be that you are not as strong as you're designed to be.
Given the hurdles faced by the minority in getting this to pass, and also the controversy surrounding the processes adopted by the Speaker himself, we saw a bit of that play out today on the floor of the House. Do you see the need for some amendment in terms of, just to give clarity to the process and to make this more biting a tool for Parliament to use on the executive?
In the beginning, I thought that the motion is one of those things that just comes straight to the floor. But from the precedent that was set, once the motion is seconded on the floor, it goes to an ad hoc, committee where the initial deliberations are done, and then they bring a report back to the full floor. The part that I was hoping the committee would have done, but again, given the very partisan nature of this issue, but I would have expected that an ad hoc committee would have brought, and I'm not privy to all of the full report, but from the conversations that I saw going on in Parliament, it doesn't look like the committee brought a full report with, yes, the finance minister is quote unquote guilty of these things, and this is the assertion of the committee, or this is the final report of the committee. It just seems like a committee report was. So if something can be done about the process where the committee can bring established findings, then I think you would strengthen the process a little bit as it moves through the committee. Otherwise, the committee becomes just another pass-through of this is what everybody said, and full Parliament just deal with that. But in terms of that's the only thing that I would want to see strengthened and clarified a little bit in terms of the censure process.
Going forward, what do you expect to happen? Already the minority is warning that this is the beginning of a path of non-cooperation as far as the finance minister and government business is concerned. That would definitely compound our woes as a country if they proceed with this. How do you expect the process, the post-censure, business to be handled?
It would depend on, there are very critical issues facing us. The question then becomes, how important are those issues to the point where the position of the minority with regards to the role of the finance minister fades or, is not quote unquote as serious as the issues that they want to see resolved. But I still do see that there will still be some tensions, but at least they've gone on record to show that they were interested in holding a Minister of State accountable. The vote failed. That's just the nature of democracy. A threshold is set. The threshold wasn't met. The minority leader was very gracious in his statement at the end of the process, and I'm sure they would move on, in terms of parliamentary business and continue to raise objections where they need to raise objections and things like that. But I think they were also very gracious about it. I listened to Dr. Ayini on Joy News about an hour ago, and I think they've been very gracious about the outcome of the entire process, and hopefully parliamentary business would go on even in the midst of all of the challenges that we face.
Doc, I'm grateful for your time. That's Dr. John Osai Kwapong, a fellow with the Center for Democratic Development, CDD. Away from Parliament, founding president and CEO of Imani Africa, Franklin Kojo, has disclosed that the Finance Ministry's invitation to civil society organizations will be rejected. Under the announced debt exchange program, bondholders like pension funds, banks, and insurance firms will have to exchange their bonds for one that will earn 0 interest next year. The new bonds will only begin to earn 5% interest in 2024 and 10% for the remainder of their tenure. The maturity date will also be extended, with the first bond maturing only in 2027. As part of consultation process, an invitation will be extended to the CSOs. But even before that happens, Franklin Kojo says many of his colleagues have agreed to turn down the invitation. Here's why.
And I don't see any ray of hope on the horizon, given the way we are behaving already. There was a bit of insincerity in the way the whole communication between the committee that was set up to look into this debt exchange and the way announcements were made almost immediately, because some aspect of the deal had been leaked to the public. So it doesn't evoke some sense of seriousness. And on hindsight, I now understand why a good friend of mine who is part of this call possibly was not part of the committee. You don't evoke a sense of seriousness as we speak. I'm told that there's some invitation that has been extended to CSOs to come and do exactly what I don't know at this 11th hour.
Is it by the finance ministry?
By the finance ministry. So there's some suggestion that, well, maybe this is just going to be window dressing. Possibly we shouldn't show up. I haven't received any letter, by the way, but colleagues who have received it are not necessarily going to turn up. So because it looks as if there isn't any serious I don't know, for lack of a better term, there's no urgency. But I characterize it as a mixture of confusion and then possibly, what's the word? I've forgotten the second word I wanted to use. But there's clear confusion, and it looks as if pride is what we are trying to pummel through in order to get that in. Pride doesn't take place in this instance. What ought to happen is a breath of fresh air. And even if Professor Buckley's wish that the finance minister should go may not necessarily instill the fresh air, we need a fresh sense of urgency.
Let's do some other stories now. Indigents of Asante Mampong have cautioned the Minerals Commission against granting prospecting license to mining companies without recourse to the interest of affected communities. This follows the persistent issuance of prospecting license to gold mining companies to the Mampong traditional area. The concerned citizens of Mampong against Galamsey, with the support of the local traditional council, say they will resist any attempt to destroy their environment under the guise of mining. That's more the following report.
Clad in black with red arm and headbands, the activists drawn from in and out of Asante Mampong emphasized on the ravaging impact of mining in most operational areas. Perturbed by the imminent threat to the 5 water sources in the area, the group questioned the mandate of the Minerals Commission in safeguarding mining communities.
One may ask why the citizens are against Galamsey.
Victor Wusu is lead convener.
The Minerals Commission is supposedly required to create a congenial atmosphere in which all stakeholders, and we say emphasis ours, all stakeholders work as partners in a safe environment to achieve sustainable development through mining. The big question is, did the Minerals Commission, in granting the minerals rights to prospective companies to mine in the Asante Mampong traditional area, engage the people as stakeholders in any form? Was there any stakeholder engagements or consultations? Did the Commission do any due diligence as to the effect of surface mining operations on rivers and water bodies in Asante Mampong? The careless abandon which the Minerals Commission grants mineral rights to prospectors without recourse to the interests of the communities, in our view, smacks of an irresponsible organization, battering the lives of people without shame or a feeling of guilt.
According to the group, the Minerals Commission in November 2022 issued a license to Active Target Minerals Resource, a gold mining company, to prospect lands and forest reserves in the area. This follows an initial opposition by the Mamponhene, Dasibre Osebonsu II, to a similar offer to Arient's company in 2019. The license withdrawal of the latter came with the distillment of the Benimhene. Nana Boachi Yadom is Jasehene.
No, actually, Yenimsa Sembiada. I've heard the Bayan said, Ebessa Babio, a municipal assembly, at the command municipal chief executive said. We
thought everything had returned to normal. Later, we saw a notice at the Municipal Assembly that they will be introducing mining at Benin. Minerals Commission has turned a blind eye to the negative consequences of mining. Asante Mampong, as a silver stool in the Asante Kingdom, serves as a major trading center to both native and foreign traders in the northern part of the region. Despite the dwindling economic situation in the area, traders here are in consent with the communal decision, but there are some who welcome responsible mining. It's a good initiative. Galamsey is destroying communities, but the youth here need jobs. If it's going to be responsible, they should introduce it. Communities are always involved in illegal mining, but they are still suffering. We agree with them if they are fighting it. If it's going to be responsible, then the leaders should consider it, because we need jobs. But if it's going to be legal, then they should reject it. Traditional leaders and residents of Asante Mampong are resolved in rejecting the harrowing impacts of mining on both economic and social activities. For Joy News, Emmanuel Bright Kweku reporting.
The National Security Secretariat has commenced military patrols in the Natpanduri encampment situated in the Bumpugu Natpanduri district of the Northeast region. The military patrol is in response to the surge in suspicious activities of criminal networks following the arrest of some young men who were illegally being trained on weapon handling in the area 2 months ago. Correspondent Elias Utanko reports.
As the number of terrorist aggression continues to grow in Ghana's far north, the National Security Service is leaving no stone unturned in advancing all four components of the country's counter-terrorism strategy. The Joint Intelligence Community, as part of the preparation to deal with the threat of radical groups emanating from the Sahel, has begun a military patrol in some part of the Natpanduri camp, officially called the Gambaga East Forest Reserve, that covers nearly 100 kilometers from Passingped near Waliwali to Ghana-Togo border at Tusugu, all in the northeast region. On Tuesday, the 5th of December, the first security reconnaissance exercise was carried out around the Nakpanduri end of the scamp by forces of the National Security Service using a military helicopter. The move, according to officials of the Regional Security Council, is in response to a recent surge in suspicious movement of groups and individuals towards the Garu Nakpanduri enclave. The district chief executive for Bunkurgu Nakpanduri, Joseph Loknan, confirmed that the scamp had been targeted by criminal networks that have the intention to use the area as either an operational base or a potential training ground.
Yes, we got that information, and quickly I had to inform NIB and National Security Operatives, and a swoop was done. They even arrested some people and then took them to Accra, and they were screened. So what you are saying is really true, and that is why we are putting these measures.
The DC reminds the population that the scamp is one of the protected areas and remains the property of the government of Ghana, adding that the government is committed to protecting it against the activities of criminal elements.
And how they can report and the identity will not be known. So yesterday joint DASA meeting at Garo was mainly on how to protect the scamp against terrorists, against people using it for training and other things. Actually, those signs are there.
With its epic viewpoint and cool overhangs, the scamp, which rises over 300 meters high in some places, is one of the favorite yet undeveloped tourist destinations in the region. The town of Nakpanduri provides the best and most accessible views from atop the scamp, and also the northernmost section of the Eastern Corridor Road, also known as the National Road 2, passes through this enclave to end at the border with Togo and Burkina Faso via the twin village of Sankanse. This area also forms part of an internationally recognized migratory corridor for the movement of elephant and transhumans herders from the sub-region. Its position as a commercial border crossroad makes it a transit point for trafficking of fuel, drugs, firearms, motorbikes, and prestige goods such as wax prints to and from Burkina Faso, Togo, and Benin. The Nakpanduri part of the scamp has long been a lawless area, particularly in the 2000s when criminal gangs led by the notorious Johnson Combian took advantage of the state's weak presence, in particular of the security forces, to multiply the number of robberies, smuggling, theft, and looting on the road. The road had become dangerous, so much so that it was almost impossible to travel at night until a security operation led to the arrest of Combian and his gang. Very recently, in June of this year, the National Security Service issued an advisory informing the public about an alleged suspicious movement of armed turban-wearing men who were transiting on motorcycles towards Garu. Are these enough signs or intimations that violent extremist groups are attempting to settle and operate from the Nakpanduri scamp? Only time will tell. Ilyas Sutanko, Joy News.
You're watching Joy News Prime with me, Ernest Kojo Manu. We're taking a break. On We're return, we'll bring you more stories and hear from the 84-year-old statesman nicknamed the Gentle Giant.
And they say.
Some people say Jack.
Or Jack is the initials. But I don't know. That's how they perceive me. Well, I've got a bit of height and, of course, a bit of bulk, too. So perhaps given this size and height, people might expect me to be a bit of a bully or something.
Many thanks for staying with us here on Joy News Prime with me, Ernest Kojo Manu. The dilapidated state of school structures, poor road network, and abject poverty is preventing pupils at Nkwantapon DA Primary School in the Bosomefreho district of the Ashanti region from accessing good education. Isaac Enin, a 32-year-old teacher and philanthropist at the school, is undertaking a lot of activities to mitigate the condition there, but his interventions are not enough to offer a good future to their children. Abigail Owusu-Bonsu made a trip to Nkwantapong and filed this report.
The school sits in the enclaves of Bosome-Frehon district, the Ashanti region.
We are speaking to Isaac Akosiabayao, a teacher in this community school, about the current situation in this community.
Isaac Enin has been teaching pupils in classes 5 and 6 at the Nkwantapong DA Primary School since March 2018. His appointment to the school as a teacher came as a shock when he realized the critical state he had to function.
I was watching Adum TV news. In one of their bulletins, they were saying that there is a community in Bosome-Frehon for the first time. They have seen car. So I asked myself, do we have a community in Ghana here? The kids have never seen car before. As a teacher, being posted to this place, in the first place, it's not easy to be posted here. And most of our colleagues, they didn't come because of the condition. They will come and then spy here, go and will never come back.
He explains most pupils come to school on empty stomach and pay low attention to their studies, which jeopardizes their academics.
They were truants. They were not coming to school. I asked one of them, have you eaten? She said, no, I'm hungry, sir. And I said, why? Were you not giving money when you were coming to school? She said, no, my mom says she has left some plantains home. So when it's break time, we should come and cook and eat. So that's what some of them were doing. They will go home and will never come back to school again.
The pupils lacked any source of drive, with education materials unattainable, no shoes and torn uniforms. Bad road conditions have compelled commercial drivers to reject travels to Nkwantapong. Isaac says students walk long distances to attend school daily.
They have to walk every day distance to the down there, the other town, to continue their JHS education, and which is affecting them because of the distance. Sometimes when it rains, they have to stay home.
The school is crippled with open classrooms, broken and hanging roofs, uncompleted classroom blocks, and death-trapped toilet facilities.
2 weeks, I was almost died. Snake, big one.
Auntie Agi has her 2 grandchildren in Nkwantapong DA Primary School. She says the situation has compelled teachers to either abandon the school or report late to class. Nyame Lawrence is the head teacher. He says several requests have been sent to authorities concerning the situation at the school, but yielded no results.
The GC promised us to re-establish the school for us, but I think we paid that yes. 3 times that we have comforted the GC.
Mr. Isaac Enin donates clothes and shoes to replace the worn-out shoes of his people. He launched the Yogurt Day to award and motivate pupils who attend school for the full week.
The right to basic education is guaranteed by the Constitution. Unfortunately, the manifestation of this right is questionable in Nkwantapong. The community is pleading with the government to come to their aid. Reporting for Joy News, Abigail Owusu-Bonsu.
Where to fix the economic mess? That's the call from some Ghanaians to President Akufo-Addo, as they lament the harsh economic conditions that they say is beginning to bite harder. That was top of their concerns in today's edition of The People's Voice, where we hand over the microphones to you.
Government should work to reduce the price of goods. My transport business is almost collapsing.
Fuel prices so
This government hasn't done much to help.
Times are hard. Right now, I can't even afford anything. Even used clothing is very expensive.
2 weeks here ni say akwa 70.
People have inflated the prices of these items.
Anyama ni bokwa na ekosoro enso nipa na eton no wo mu nyina ya Kristofo wo mu ya asofo.
These are supposed to be old stock, so why are they selling it this expensive?
This festive season will be hard for us. No one is buying from us, so we can't even buy anything.
Abansi one fair juma ye fo afi ba ko no me de ha me pa isan say makwa bosia makwa jilo na me de hwe me best school.
Why has government decided to freeze employment? How will my children get jobs so they can take care of me?
Parliament wo kwa enfie na wakodi wo kwa ye man S Gracia 4 million.
I schooled my children on loans. How do you expect me to pay back when they can't get jobs? Government should reduce its expenditure so that they can employ our children.
I'm concerned about transport fares. Lately, you can't even budget for it. Everyone is charging what they want. I'm tired of it. They should try and reduce fuel prices so we can have some breathing space.
The People's Voice is back on Joy News. Watch out, our microphones will be in your community very soon. This is Joy News Prime. We're taking a break. On Worry 10, we have showbiz for you.